Hello everyone and welcome back. Thanks for joining me today. As promised, this is part 2 of a 2-part interview with my very good friend, Buddy. Buddy, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
In our first interview, we talked about your life in New York, you growing up in New York, a bit about your driving. So today we will be talking mainly about your driving experiences here in New York. The majority of us know that you drove the bus. So my first question to you today will be, how long did you drive?
Well, it was about 34 years and 8 months.
34 years and 8 months. That is a very long time. What made you decide to become a bus driver?
Well, my mother reminded me years later that when I was a child, or a young lad, she had asked me what did I want to be. And so I told her a bus driver. I guess I must have been kind of impressed with the drivers back in the late 50s, early 60s, you know, with their nice uniforms and their bus driver hats and the big buses they drove, you know, Greyhound and Trailway, you know, impressed to the point that that is what I thought I wanted to be.
How long did it take you to get into MTA?
Well, about 2 years after I took the test. I took the test, I believe, was in 1981. They called me in 1983.
Was the test hard? Was it a written test or was it a computer-based test?
It was a written test, and it wasn't too difficult. There was some common knowledge and a lot of common sense.
I know that to drive the bus, you need a CDL license. Did you have one before you start driving the bus, or did you get it when you decide to apply for the bus driving job?
No, I had mine already when I started. I had planned to get a job with one of the over-the-road bus companies, you know, Dominico, Greyhound, Trailway. So I had mine already. It was called a CDL for chauffeur driver's license rather than CDL now, which means commercial driver's license.
What was the first garage you drove out of?
I drove out of Fresh Pond Depot in Ridgewood section of Brooklyn. I was there for about 2 years.
Can you remember the first bus that you drove, the number of the bus?
Well, the first bus I trained on was, I believe, the B-52 that ran down Gates Avenue from Ridgewood to downtown Brooklyn.
Did you drive any other buses in Brooklyn different from the one you mentioned?
Oh yeah, I drove the B-13, the B-18, the B-24, the B-26, the B-38, and I said before the 52, the B-57, the B-59. Did I say B-53?
I don't remember.
Okay, if I said 54, then I didn't drive 54, it was 53, it later became 54.
How did you like driving in Brooklyn?
It was good. I mean, I didn't really know anything different than Brooklyn. It was my, the first place I drove a bus, so everything was new to me, so it was interesting. I was learning, you know, just getting used to the job itself. So I enjoyed it while I was there.
When you drove in Brooklyn, where were you living at the time?
I was always living in Queens.
So you would commute daily from Queens to Brooklyn to get to your job?
Yes, and I drove, so it really didn't take me a long time to get there, unless traffic was really heavy.
You said you drove in Brooklyn for 2 years. Which garage did you go to after you left Brooklyn?
I transferred after a couple of years to Flushing Depot in Flushing, New York, which is now called Casey Stengel. I came there, I believe it was in late 84, 85. And I was there until I retired.
What are some of the routes you drove while you were at Casey Stengel?
Well, I drove the Q12, meaning Queens 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 20A, 20B, 26, 27, 28, 32, X32, 44, 44VP, 44FS, the Q48, the X51.
You mentioned the Q20A and the Q20B. What is the difference between those two buses?
Well, they both start out in College Point. The Q20B starts out on 15th Avenue and College Point Boulevard, whereas the 20A starts out on 20th Avenue. They both come through Main Street, Flushing, go all the way to Jamaica, end up on Merritt Boulevard at Archer Avenue.
Talking about the Q20A and the Q20B, something comes to mind. Those transfers you get on the buses, would you mind elaborating a bit on them for us?
Yeah, every paying customer, whether by coin or by MetroCard, is entitled to a transfer if they choose to get one. With the MetroCard, you automatically get one. With the coin payment, it's your choice. If you're only taking one bus and don't want to transfer, you don't have to ask for one. But if you do, you can request one. And the cardboard transfers are good to transfer from bus to bus. You cannot use them as a return trip, like to get off one bus and take that same bus back in the opposite direction. Whereas the MetroCard, you get an electronic transfer. You can use it to transfer from one bus to another bus, from one bus to the train, or from train to bus, or even from train to train.
And these transfers, they're good for up to 2 hours.
Yes, that transfer lasts from 2 hours from the time you pay until the time if you choose to ride again, then you have a 2-hour window there.
And there is no Omni. All you have to do is set up your digital wallet on your devices or scan your bank card on the Omni reader, and you still get your transfers when you do that. The fare all around is $2.75 unless you decide to use the express bus, which is $6.75. You mentioned the 44FS and the 44VP. Could you elaborate on those buses a bit for us?
Yeah, the 44FS, FS stood for Flushing Shuttle, which is a discontinued line. Also, the VP stood for Vlay Place, or Vlay Place, some people pronounced it, which is also one of the discontinued lines in the garage.
Okay, what did you love most about your job?
Well, I like serving the people. Number one, I love driving. So, they said if you love driving, then you have half the battle won. I like dealing with the different people, getting on the bus. You had the power really to even turn a frown into a smile. You never know exactly where somebody's coming from when they get on the bus. And you being the first person that they see, in the public and representing that authority, you can really change their disposition.
Did you meet any lifelong friends on your job?
Yeah, I met a brother there named Calvin Thompson. Yeah, I met him one day. He was working out in the gym in Flushing Garage, and I believe I had Chinese food that day for lunch or something. Anyway, I had a soy sauce in my pocket, and I said, you want me to hold the bag for you? He was punching a heavy bag, and he said, yeah, sure. So I went and held the bag, and bam! He hit the bag so hard, man, it busted the soy sauce in my pocket. So we had a really good laugh that day. And we went on to be, really very good friends, even till today.
Did you meet any other friend than Calvin Thompson?
Yeah, I also met another friend there. As a matter of fact, I knew him from when we were kids. We were in the 4th grade together in Gatewood. He says, hey, you know something, buddy? I think I have a 4th grade picture of us when we were in Mr. Mayevsky's class, one of my favorite teachers back then. And he showed it to me. Yeah, it was a big class and all the names. Didn't realize I remembered so many names of the kids that were in our class back then. But we reunited as friends, I guess you could say. We worked together until actually both of us retired, and still to some degree keep in touch.
For all the years that you were on the job, did anything ever happen that made you want to quit?
Not really. I mean, there were some things that were somewhat discouraging. I do remember one time I was doing a trip on the Q20A bus, and I got into Bayside, and one of the big thick glasses on the bus shelter had somehow or other dislodged and was laying kind of horizontal on part of the stand and part of the ground. And I saw it, and I started to just leave it alone. But then I thought about the kids getting off of school. So if a kid don't see that, it's going to be like a horizontal guillotine. They're going to run into it and just cut their legs. So I went to pick it up. It was very heavy, so I had to put a lot of force on it to even grab it. And when I picked it up, evidently maybe the sun was shining a long time or whatever, and as I got it up, it just exploded into like thousands, literally thousands of pieces. It's a good thing I had on my cap and long sleeve shirt. And I didn't have on a long sleeve shirt because my arm got cut. I actually had to go to the hospital for it. I didn't get stitches, but they did have to put one of the little tape type things on it. And that was a little discouraging, but it wasn't enough to make me want to quit the job because, like I said, I love, first of all, driving, and I love serving the people. And on the job also, when we started, they gave us 3 S's, which later they added a 4th S, which stood for safety, service, and schedule. So we know good service is very important, and we know that the schedule is very important, but if either one of those jeopardized safety, then we were supposed to throw that out the window, just make sure people got to where they needed to go in safety. And that 4th S, as it started to get rough out there, was added for survival. So we kind of learned how to survive, even though things got a little discouraging. You still just got up early in the morning and did what you had to do, and and got paid for it. And many people thought of the job as a thankless job. I'd heard the guys before saying, management never says thanks, but they do say thanks. Every couple of Thursdays they paid us, and to me, that was thanks enough. Even though I did hear some verbal thank yous from time to time, it wasn't a thankless job. And not just that, being able to get my passengers from point A to point B safely, to me, was thanks enough.
Tell us about a really good experience you had on your job, something you remember and cherish.
Something that really stands out in my mind is I was on the Q13 bus, and I would get this older lady that lived in Bayside, pretty regular. And so I'd drop her off at her house, or would pick her back up across the street where the bus stop was from her house. So one day the weather was bad. I think it maybe had some snow on the ground. And anyway, I'm coming by, and I would always purposely look over to see if I see her. And so sure enough, I did see her. Her house was kind of set back, and she was just locking her door. And so I said, well, I'm going to wait for her, And so I waited, and she came, and she crossed the street after the traffic let her cross. And she got on the bus, and she was just so thankful. And she was so thankful that she wrote a commendation into the job for me, and the boss called me to the office and let me know how grateful she was, read the letter to me that she had wrote, and at the end of the letter, something that really warmed my heart, and she says, and this bus driver has a fan for life. Oh man, that was really gratifying.
While driving the bus, what was the longest and shortest route you had?
I believe the Q44 that went from Jamaica to the Bronx was the longest route. And the shortest route, I believe, was the 44 VP that went from Queens College to Union Turnpike and Queens Boulevard.
What route did you retire from?
The Q26. That was a relatively short route also, but not the shortest.
What was the route for that bus?
That bus ran from Roosevelt Avenue and Main Street to Francis Lewis Boulevard and 58th Avenue.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your former job with New York City Transit?
I'll give it a 9+.
Why a 9+?
Because I don't really have any regrets or any sorrows for it, and I'm comparing them to all the other jobs that I had in coming up. And that was definitely the best, without a doubt. And I say it was the best because, well, it was a career move. It was something that promised me retirement if I gave them a certain amount of time. That was 25 years of service and 55 years of age. I happened to have gone a good number of years over it that time, and in my going over it increased my pension. They were never late paying me, always paid me on time.
You seem very pleased.
Every promise within the contract, they fulfilled it. And I really don't have any regrets about going to New York City Transit.
What made you decide to retire?
Well, it seems that signs started pointing to it's time to go. Different things started happening. And I called my cousin in Chicago. He was a principal, a retired principal, my cousin Alvin. And I said, tell me something, because what criteria did you use to determine when and how you were going to retire? And he said, well, I tell you something, buddy. He said, one day I went into the office And he said, everything inside of me said, it's time to go. And so that's how it kind of started happening with me. Things would just point that, yeah, I think it's time to go. Go while you can go out. You came in with your head up, you want to go out with your head up. Yeah, too many things are happening on the road nowadays. It's time to retire. And I spoke to my family about it, and they agreed, and I retired.
You mentioned 25 years of service and 55 years of age. What if you don't make that? Will that affect your pension?
Yeah, sure it would. We had different tiers. We had tier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and maybe even 7, I'm not sure. But I was under tier 4. For example, tier 1 had a 20-year of service and a 50-year age requirement to receive a full pension. Tier 4, the tier I was under, has a 25 years of service and a 55 years of age requirement. If you fall short in either age or service, then they calculate it and they'll let you know exactly what your amount, your diminished amount would be. If you go over that, like for example, once you reach 25 and go over 25, from 25 to 30, you'll get 2% for every year more that you serve. So at the 30 years of service, you would actually get 60%. After 30 years, they give you 1.5% per year. So you can calculate that. But yeah, your pension is affected when either service or age either does not add up to or exceeds the requirement.
If you were called back to the job, would you go?
Ooh, that is some question there. I guess it's according to the compensation, what they offered to go back, to how long they would require me to come back. That's a prayer.
At this point, I will be wrapping up my interview. Buddy, I want to thank you very much for sharing your driving experiences as a bus driver with us. Thank you for serving the people of New York. Overall, thanks for being with us here today. Viewers, thank you very much for tuning in.